It started with a phone call. A call no one was ever supposed to hear. No cameras. No headlines. Just a quiet conversation behind closed doors, the kind that doesn't make news until years later, when someone finally leaks what really happened. But this time? The silence itself was the story. Because in that quiet moment, something shifted. Something that sent shockwaves through women's basketball, not with a bang, but with a whisper. A decision that told everyone watching, no one is untouchable. Not even her. For nearly a decade, Aya Wilson had been exactly that, untouchable. The kind of player you built franchises around. The kind you didn't even think about leaving off a roster. The kind who looked in the mirror and saw not just the best in the WNBA, but the face of the WNBA itself. But in early 2026, behind those closed doors at USA Basketball, that certainty cracked. Her name was left off the list. Not due to injury. Not for rest. By choice. And stepping into that vacuum? Caitlin Clark. A rising force who didn't just seize the moment, she redefined the balance of power itself. This isn't about a single roster decision. This is about what happens when dominance meets disruption. When perception shifts. When the game quietly decides it's ready for a new face at the top. To understand how we arrived at this moment, you need to go back. Picture 2022. Aya Wilson at the absolute peak of her powers. She had the MVP trophies, plural. The championship rings, multiple. The endorsement deals, the magazine covers, the analysts calling her the greatest of her generation without hesitation. Wilson wasn't just the best player in the WNBA. She was the WNBA. When fans thought of women's basketball, they thought of her. When sponsors wrote checks, they wrote them to her. When young girls dreamed of going pro, they dreamed of being her. She had earned it. Years of grinding. Years of dominating. Years of being the one everyone had to game plan around. When she looked in the mirror, she saw someone who had earned the undisputed right to be the center of attention. And she had no intention of sharing that with anyone. None whatsoever. And then Caitlin Clark happened. Clark didn't enter quietly. She didn't wait her turn. She exploded, like a comet, bright and impossible to ignore, leaving broken records and stunned defenders in her wake. Suddenly, every arena she played in was selling out weeks in advance. Every game she touched was shattering television ratings the WNBA had chased for decades. Every highlight reel was dominated by her impossible 30-foot three-pointers. She got another one! Second three of the quarter for Caitlin Clark. Casual fans, people who had never watched women's basketball, were now setting reminders for her games. Buying her jerseys. Telling their friends, "You have to watch this girl." The sport was experiencing a genuine cultural moment. Something that should have been celebrated by everyone who loved the game. But Wilson did not celebrate. She could not. When Wilson watched the coverage, when she saw the sponsorship deals and the way Clark's name was suddenly the first word out of every analyst's mouth, something inside her shifted. Instead of recognizing that a rising tide lifts all boats, instead of understanding that Clark's popularity was bringing millions of new eyes and new dollars into a league that desperately needed both, Wilson made a decision that would unravel everything she had built. She decided Caitlin Clark was not a colleague. Not a rival. She decided Clark was her enemy. And you can trace it in real time. When Clark signed a Nike deal in 2024, Wilson posted a Bible verse about being patient when others find success. When Clark was named Times Athlete of the Year, Wilson's response was cryptic commentary radiating skepticism. She started using phrases like sustained excellence, transparently designed to draw a line between herself and the younger player. None of it was subtle. And none of it went unnoticed. Here's the thing about jealousy: it never stays hidden. It leaks. In loaded interviews. In passive-aggressive social media. In the way she changed the subject whenever Clark's name came up. Wilson made the fatal mistake of turning every Clark achievement into a personal insult. She made Clark's success about herself, rather than about the growth of the game. And what Wilson didn't realize: Team USA officials were watching every interaction. With cold, professional eyes. Taking very detailed notes. Now, this is where mainstream media almost never goes. Everyone talks about Wilson's dominance. Her 4 MVPs. 3 championships. Her historic 2025 season, first player in WNBA or NBA history to win the league title, Finals MVP, regular season MVP, and Defensive Player of the Year, all in a single campaign. On paper? Untouchable. But paper doesn't play international basketball. There's a fundamental problem with Wilson's game, and insiders call it the special whistle. Look at her free throw attempts. Staggering. On the surface, that looks like dominance. But break down the film? You see a player who has mastered initiating contact and selling it to referees. Every drive ends with an exaggerated motion. Every defensive contest results in an appeal. Within the WNBA system, it works beautifully. The rules favor offensive players. The referees know who the stars are. But FIBA referees? They don't care about your MVP trophies. They don't care about your followers. They officiate a game where physical defense isn't merely permitted, it's expected. The contact that sends Wilson to the line a dozen times in the WNBA? That earns nothing more than a play-on signal internationally. Team USA scouts watched Wilson in international settings. Her scoring efficiency didn't just dip, it collapsed. When referees allowed royal defense, Wilson looked like a completely different player. Now compare Clark. She pulls up from 30 feet and drains shots no referee can take away. She doesn't flail or hunt for whistles, she finishes through contact. Her game is built on pure fundamental skill. In her first senior national team game, after 239 days off with a groin injury and bone bruise, Clark dropped 17 points and 12 assists in 19 minutes. The second most assists ever in a FIBA World Cup qualifying game. That's not a system player. That's borderless talent. When USA Basketball released the 12-player roster for the 2026 FIBA World Cup qualifiers, the names told a story. Caitlin Clark was on it. Angel Reese. Paige Buchers. Veterans like Chelsea Gray and Kelsey Plum. Aya Wilson was not. Neither was Breanna Stewart. The selection committee cited rest for veterans. Stewart still flew to Miami to mentor the younger roster. Wilson was nowhere near the program. According to sources, Wilson's reaction was explosive. The woman who thought she was untouchable discovered the player she'd worked so hard to undermine was being handed the platform she believed belonged to her. The meltdown lasted days. Frantic calls to anyone at USA Basketball. Emergency meetings. Stories planted about scheduling conflicts that nobody bought. Meanwhile, in San Juan, Clark was playing. Not posting cryptic messages. Not demanding explanations. Playing. Across 5 games, Team USA went 5-0, outscoring opponents by an average of 42 points. Clark led the tournament in assists. Shot 52.9% from the field. 40% from 3. Head coach Kara Lawson built the system around her vision. And when the dust settled, USA Basketball handed her the tournament MVP award. Not as a consolation prize, as recognition that she was the best player on a team full of elite talent. Wilson's camp floated scheduling conflicts. Nobody believed it. Everyone saw it for what it was, a desperate attempt to save face. The contrast, Clark posted a simple thank you. Wilson's response was noise, blame, and barely concealed fury. International competition operates on a different frequency. It's not about raw talent or statistics. It's about handling pressure when your entire nation is watching. Maintaining composure when hostile crowds are screaming. Representing your country with dignity when cameras capture your every reaction. The Olympic stage magnifies everything. It exposes weaknesses. And it reveals true character. A player who spirals when strangers question her accomplishments? Not someone you want carrying the psychological weight of American basketball. A player who responds to a competitor's success with jealousy instead of unity? Not someone you want in your locker room when pressure is highest. Team USA coaches had seen championship hopes crumble, not from lack of talent, but from surplus of ego. Wilson gave them evidence off the court. When she told Time magazine that Black women's history was being erased by Clark's narrative, she made a legitimate point. But the delivery? The edge? The personal grievance directed at a player who'd repeatedly credited those who came before? That told coaches Wilson couldn't separate the cause from the competition. Clark herself had addressed this directly, using her time honor to pay tribute to the Black stars who paved the way. She named names. She gave credit. Wilson's response was to claim the history was being erased anyway. That gap revealed something coaches file away and never forget. Clark walked into San Juan having not played in 239 days. Groin strain. Bone bruise. Only 13 games in 2025. Missed the playoffs. And even without Clark, WNBA viewership rose 5%, the highest in league history, proving the audience wasn't just showing up for one player. The game itself had been elevated. But when Clark returned, she looked like someone who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. 17 points, 12 assists, 19 minutes. A statement that silenced every question about rust. By the final, Team USA 84, Spain 70, Clark had established herself as the engine. Not the veteran stars. Not the Olympians with gold medals. The 23-year-old from Iowa who dreamed of this since third grade. The chemistry between Clark, Reese, and Buchers was beautiful, something Wilson's towering ego would never have permitted. Reese averaged 8.0 rebounds. Buchers led in steals. Clark ran the show with unselfish vision. No hierarchy. No ego. Just talent playing for each other. Team USA needs players who check their personal numbers at the door. Wilson's track record suggested she'd demand everything revolve around her. Clark's track record, and her performance, demonstrated the opposite. The 2026 FIBA World Cup in Berlin will showcase this new generation. Kara Lawson is building around versatility, pace, shooting, precisely what Clark brings. And then 2028 in Los Angeles, a home Olympics. The roadmap is clear. The future has names on it. And Aya Wilson's is not written in ink anymore. Wilson's approach focused on existing fans. Clark's creates new ones, pulling in people who never watched women's basketball. In a sport fighting for every eyeball? That difference isn't marginal. It's existential. The USA-Great Britain game became the most watched non-final in tournament history. That's not an accident. That's the Caitlin Clark effect, on a global stage. Wilson may still have the resume, but Clark has the future. And in sports? The future always wins. Power doesn't collapse with noise. It moves in silence, in decisions made far from the spotlight. What happened to Aya Wilson wasn't just a roster omission. It was a signal that something deeper is shifting. A recalibration of value, of influence, of what it really means to lead. Standing on the other side is Caitlin Clark. Not just rising, but redefining the space entirely. Not asking for the throne, but changing what it represents. Because power like this doesn't settle. It transfers. It evolves. The headlines will fade. The debates will cool. But the decisions being made right now will echo into Berlin, into Los Angeles, and into a future where legacy is no longer inherited, it's constantly challenged. So one question remains: when the next door closes, will it be because of performance, or because the balance of power has already decided who no longer belongs? If you want to stay ahead of every shift, every decision, every moment that changes the game, then you need Hoop Uncovered. We don't just report headlines. We break down what they really mean. We go beneath the surface. We tell you what the cameras don't show. So here's the deal. Subscribe. Right now. Because when power shifts and legends fall, you'll hear it here first. Hit the bell. Never miss a breakdown. Drop a like. Let me know you want more. And comment, do you think Aya Wilson ever wears Team USA again? Or has the balance of power already shifted? I read every single one. This is Hoop Uncovered. We're just getting started. See you in the next one.